Adventure, fun, and fantasy are waiting on the shelf. A story's so much better with a friend than by yourself. The cover picture is a doorway to another land. So gather round and let the story take us by the hand. We're telling tales with friends, and we've got plans for you. GaaGaa's playing Goldilocks, this bear is peekaboo. Here's Tilly, Larry, and our Harry, great to have you all. Stories are for everyone, the young, old, big, and small. Tales and Friends. Tom Thumb. Tom is played by GooGoo. Mom is played by Giggs. The boys are played by Hugg. Once upon a time, there was a boy named Tom. Tom loved to play basketball with his friends, but there was a problem. His friends wouldn't let him play. You see, Tom was very small. He was smaller than all his friends, and they didn't think he could play basketball because he was so different. Every day after school, all the boys would go to the park and play basketball. Tom would go too, hoping that this would be the day he'd get to play. But every day, the boys told him that he was too small. So Tom would just sit and watch. Tom was very sad. He actually liked being small, but it made him different. He wanted to be big like the other boys. Every night, he made a wish he could be big. But every morning, he woke up and saw that he was still small. "Why do I have to be different from the other boys?" Tom asked his mommy. "Being different isn't a bad thing," said his mommy. "Being different can be good. It means that you are special." But Tom didn't feel very special. He just felt sad. The next day, Tom went to the park, hoping that this would be the day the big boys let him play. But when they didn't, he started to cry. He cried and cried until he heard someone else crying too. He opened his eyes and saw one of the big boys had fallen into a bed of roses. The boy was holding up his hand and pointing to a thorn that was sticking out. "It hurts!" cried the boy. "Someone get it out!" The other big boys tried to take the thorn out, but their hands were too big. "If only we had someone with tiny little hands," the bigger boy cried. "Then they could help me." The boys looked around. Who had the tiniest little hands? Tom looked at his hands. His hands were tiny. He could help. "I can help you," Tom said. The boys looked at him. "You can?" they asked. "Yes," Tom said. "I can try." So Tom went over to the boy, climbed up on his hand, and used his tiny little hands to hold on to the thorn. He grabbed it tight and pulled it with all his might until the thorn came out. "Hooray, you did it! Thank you," the boys cheered. Tom was so happy. He ran home to tell his mommy about what he did. "See," said his mommy, "being different is a great thing." "Yes, it is," agreed Tom. "All the other boys are the same size and they couldn't help. But I am different. I am smaller than the others. And if I weren't so little, I couldn't have helped my friend." "So, are you still sad that you were different?" asked Mommy. Tom shook his head. "No, now I am happy. You were right. Being different makes me special." The next day, after school, when all the boys went to the park to play basketball, they asked Tom to play with them. The big boy even came up to Tom and apologized for being mean to him. "We're sorry we didn't let you play before. We didn't think you could because you were so different. You were so small." but now we know that we were wrong. There's lots of things you can do." "Right," said Tom as he picked up the basketball and hopped onto one of the big boy's shoulders. Together they ran down the court and made a basket. Swoosh! The big boys never told Tom he couldn't play with them again, and Tom never felt sad about being different ever again. The end. The Elves and the Shoemaker. The shoemaker is played by Sammy. The wife is played by Eve. The elves are played by the color crew. The kids are played by GooGoo and GaaGaa. There once was an old shoemaker and his wife. They were very good people, and even though they didn't have much for themselves, always helped the needy families in their village. One day, the shoemaker saw a barefoot child in the street and gave her his last pair of new shoes. When he returned home, he looked at his barren work table and sighed to his wife. "We only have 2 small pieces of leather left, not enough to make even one more pair of shoes." The old shoemaker was worried that they would run out of money. "If you help others, then others will help you," his wife smiled. This made the old man feel better because he knew his wife was right. "Yes, we will be okay," he said and got ready for bed. When they woke up the next day, they were surprised by what they saw on the table. A pair of new shoes! "What in the world? Who made these?" the old man said. His wife was just as confused as he was. "Not me," she said, "but maybe we can sell these today." And that's exactly what happened. Later that day, the shoemaker sold the shoes, giving him enough money to buy leather for 2 more pairs of shoes. But on his way to purchase the leather, he saw a boy in the street asking for food. The old man looked at the money in his hand and gave some to the boy. The boy's eyes widened and he ran off to the market. Later that evening, the shoemaker returned home. He told his wife that he helped a poor child, but now they only have enough leather to make 1 new pair of shoes. "If you help others, then others will help you," his wife reminded him. He nodded warmly, set the scraps of leather on the table, and went to bed. When they woke up the next day, they were surprised again at what they saw on the table. 2 new pairs of shoes. "Who is making us these shoes?" the old man asked. "We must find whoever is helping us and thank them," the shoemaker said. "Yes," his wife agreed, "and let's give them milk and cookies to show them how much we care." So that night, they set more leather on the table and hid in the corner with a tray of milk and cookies, waiting to see who came. They waited and waited, and just when they were about to give up, 2 little elves with big eyes and big ears scurried across the floor wearing tattered old clothes. The elves jumped onto the table and got to work making new pairs of shoes. The shoemaker and his wife smiled as they watched the curious creatures work. Finally, the shoemaker and his wife stepped out from the shadows holding a tray of cookies and glasses. "We want to thank you for helping us," the wife smiled. "Would you join us for a snack?" the shoemaker asked. The elves sat down at the table and gobbled up all the cookies. "Where do you live?" the shoemaker asked. "Under a bridge in the village," said one of the elves. "It gets cold at night, but we huddle together to keep warm." If you help others, then others will help you, the shoemaker remembered. You no longer have to live under the bridge, he exclaimed. Please come and live with us and we can be one big happy shoemaking family, his wife said. The elves jumped to their feet and gave the shoemaker and his wife big hugs. And from that night on, they lived happily ever after, making shoes and eating milk and cookies. The end. Cinderella. Cinderella is played by Giggs. The fairy is played by GaaGaa. Sir Winston Ruffles is played by Harry the Bunny. Cinderella was a very special little girl. She had no family, and her only friends were the animals in the woods. All the birds, mice, and squirrels just loved Cinderella, and she loved them right back. One day, a little birdie whispered something in her ear. There's going to be a grand ball in the palace this evening, said the birdie. Sir Winston Ruffles, the most famous singer in all the land, will be performing right when the clock strikes midnight, and we are all invited. Cinderella was so excited that she gave the birdie a big kiss and ran off to her house to pick out a dress to wear. But when she opened her closet, all she saw were old clothes. Maybe she could buy something new, she thought. But when she opened her purse, she found no money. What was she to do? She fell to the floor and started to cry. Just then, a fairy appeared and asked why such a sweet girl was so upset. Cinderella cried, I can't go to the grand ball tonight because I don't have anything nice to wear, and I won't be able to meet Sir Winston Ruffles, the most famous singer in all the land. The fairy fluttered down and said, That is sad. What will you do? But Cinderella had an idea. Could you cast a magic spell to make me a shiny new dress? The fairy wiped the tears from Cinderella's cheeks. My dearest Cinderella, magic will happen only if you help yourself first, the fairy said as she flew out the window. Cinderella decided that's exactly what she would do. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work making her own dress. Cinderella took old clothes from her closet, cut them up, and began sewing them back together to make something new and beautiful. But the clock was ticking faster and faster. I'm running out of time. I might not make it to Sir Winston Ruffles' performance. So she started cutting and sewing as fast as she could. As Cinderella worked, her animal friends came to the windowsill. Look, Cinderella needs our help, they shouted. So the birdies, the mice, and the squirrels all jumped into action and started to help. Now everyone was cutting and sewing as fast as they could. When they were done, Cinderella stepped in front of the mirror to reveal a shiny new dress. She was so happy and thankful, but then she looked at the clock. Oh no, it's almost midnight. I won't make it in time to see Sir Winston Ruffles. Cinderella fell to her knees and started to cry. Just then, the fairy fluttered through the window. My dear Cinderella, she said, you did your part. You helped yourself by making a beautiful dress. Now it's time for me to help you get to the ball on time. With some magic. The fairy smiled and waved her wand high into the air, casting a magical spell. Suddenly, the pumpkin by the door turned into a carriage. The mouse turned into a horse, and the squirrel turned into a driver. Your carriage awaits, my dear, said the fairy. Cinderella thanked the fairy, jumped into the carriage, and off they went as fast as they could towards the palace. As the carriage pulled up to the palace, Cinderella opened the door, jumped out, and ran up the stairs towards the ballroom. Just as she reached the top of the steps, one of her slippers slipped off and she fell to the ground. She looked up at the clock and saw that it was almost midnight. She was too late. Just then, she heard a kind voice ask, "Is this yours, my friend?" She wiped away her tears and saw Sir Winston Ruffles, the most famous singer in all the land, holding her slipper. He helped her up off the ground and slid the slipper back onto her foot. "May I escort you to the ballroom?" he asked. Cinderella smiled and walked with him towards the ballroom just as the clock struck midnight. The end. Adventure, fun, and fantasy are waiting on the shelf. A story's so much better with a friend than by yourself. The cover picture is a doorway to another land. So gather round and let the story take us by the hand. We're telling tales with friends, and we've got plans for you. GaaGaa's playing Goldilocks, this bear is peekaboo. Here's Tilly, Larry, and our Harry, great to have you all. Stories are for everyone, the young, old, big, and small. Tales and Friends. The Little Mermaid. Triton is played by Fred. The Little Mermaid is played by Fiona. The man in the boat is played by the Puzzle Kid. There once was a kingdom deep under the sea called Atlantis. It was the most magical kingdom ever created. There were tall, towering trees, beautiful houses, and wonderful sculptures. The citizens of Atlantis were so proud of their home, and none were more proud than Triton, king of the sea, and his daughter, a little mermaid named Ariel. But one day, lots of trash started falling from above and landed on Ariel's house. There were bags of trash, bottles, smelly old sneakers, broken computers, and so much more. But the trash didn't stop falling, and soon Atlantis was covered in garbage. Where is all the trash coming from, everyone wondered. And how can we stop it? It's ruining our beautiful home. The citizens of Atlantis didn't know what to do. But Ariel, the Little Mermaid, was curious to see where the trash was coming from, so she decided to go where no citizen of Atlantis ever went before. Up. "I'm going to the surface to find out what's going on," Ariel proclaimed. So she swam up and up, dodging falling trash all the way. When she finally reached the surface and peeked her head out of the water, she was amazed by what she saw. Big blue skies and a bright yellow sun shining down onto happy people in big boats. "What a beautiful place," Ariel smiled to herself. "I can't imagine all that trash would come from here." But when she looked closer, she saw that the people in the boats were throwing garbage right into the ocean, and lots of it. "I can't believe it," Ariel cried. "All the trash falling on Atlantis is coming from these people." She swam over to a man in an orange boat just as he was throwing his garbage into the ocean. "Can you please not do this?" Ariel asked. "I'm living under this sea and your trash is ruining my home." "There's nothing under the sea," the man shouted. "I can throw my trash wherever I want." Ariel tried to convince him that he was wrong, but the man didn't care. So she dove back down into the ocean and returned home. When she got back to Atlantis, she told her father what she saw. "There are horrible people living up there, and they're throwing their horrible trash right into the ocean." Upon hearing this, King Triton got so mad that he took his big wand and waved it high above his head, swirling the water so fast that he created a storm. The storm then traveled from Atlantis all the way up to the surface of the water, where it made the sky dark and turned the water into gigantic waves. Garbage started falling onto the boats. The waves tossed the man in the orange boat high into the air. "Help us!" he cried. Ariel, who had swum up to the surface, was watching and felt bad for the man. "If you and your people promise to never again throw your trash into the ocean, then I will ask my father to stop the storm," she said.
"We promise," the man yelled. "We understand now that what we're doing is wrong and harming our world. We will stop throwing our garbage into the ocean and recycle it from now on."
Ariel swam back down to Atlantis and told her father about the promise.
"As long as the people keep their promise to not litter the ocean, I will stop the storm,"
King Triton said. And just like that, the sun came out and the sea was calm. The people on the surface celebrated because the storm was over, and they even helped clean up the ocean. The citizens of Atlantis rejoiced because their kingdom would be clean again, all thanks to Ariel, the Little Mermaid. The end. The Nightingale. The Nightingale is played by Larry. The King is played by Harry the Bunny. The Servant is played by Fred. Once upon a time, there was a great king who was the nicest king in all the land. He treated all people with kindness and love, no matter who they were. One day, the king caught a cold and felt very bad. Now, it was he who needed help. People came from all over to bring him soup, tissues, and cards.
"Thank you,"
the king whispered, but it didn't help. He just felt worse. Poor king, everyone thought. There must be something they could do. Then, one day, the king's servant heard of an amazing nightingale. They said that he who hears its song will be cured at once. The servant decided to go into the forest to find the nightingale. When he found the bird, he asked him to come and sing for the sick king. "I'd be happy to help the king," said the nightingale, and flew after the servant. As they entered the king's bedroom in the castle, he was feeling very bad.
"How could a bird make me feel better?"
Coughing King asked. But just then, the bird opened its beak and sang the most beautiful song.
"Unbelievable," the king exclaimed. "I think I'm feeling better already."
From that moment on, the bird sang for the king, who got better every day. But now, the nightingale was feeling bad. He missed flying free in the woods and singing with his friends. "Can I return to the woods now?" the bird asked the king's servant. "No, you must stay here until the king is all better," the servant shouted. So, as the king got better, the nightingale got sicker. But then the king saw how badly the bird was doing. "It's not fair that for me to feel better, the nightingale has to feel bad," he said. "Send him back to the woods to get better." The servant opened the cage door and out the bird flew. Once it was back in the woods, the nightingale felt better again. But back in the kingdom, without the bird to sing him songs, the king got sick again. I must bring the nightingale back to the king, the servant thought. He went out to search the woods for the nightingale. When he couldn't find him, the servant decided to get a mechanical nightingale and bring it to the king.
This isn't a real bird,
said the king. Give it a try, my king, the servant suggested. It just might work. The servant turned a key on the bird and it started to sing. But the song was all out of tune.
Make it stop,
the king shouted, covering his ears. The servant didn't know what else he could do to help the king. The next day, as the nightingale was flying in the woods, he met a blue jay who told him that the king was sick again. The king was good to me and set me free, the nightingale said. I must go back to help him. Back at the castle, everyone was worried about the king. Suddenly, a bird's song was heard coming through the window. It was the nightingale. He had returned to the king's room to sing him a song.
Thank you for coming, my friend. I feel better already, the king said. But now we must find a way for you to keep singing to me while not getting sick yourself.
The king thought for a minute. Then he snapped his fingers.
Could you come from the forest once a day to sing to me? Asked the king. This way, I will stay healthy, and you will be as free as you wish in the woods.
The nightingale was very happy with the king's suggestion and started singing his most beautiful song yet. And from that day on, the king and the nightingale became the best of friends, always ready to help each other when the other wasn't feeling well. The end. Puss in Boots. Ricardo the Carpenter is played by Harry the Bunny. Puss is played by GooGoo. The princess is played by Giggs. The king is played by Hugg. Once upon a time, there was an old farmer who had 3 sons. When he retired, he left the farm to them. He gave one son a tractor and the other son a wheelbarrow. The only thing left for the 3rd son, a shy young carpenter named Ricardo, was a cat named Puss. Ricardo took Puss back to his workshop and got back to work. Why would my father give me a cat? He wondered out loud. And to his surprise, Puss replied, "Because I'm a special cat, and I can help you more than a tractor or a wheelbarrow," Puss said with a big smile. "I will rid you of your shyness," Puss continued. "But I need a new outfit, including a pair of boots, a firm hat, and a fancy belt. And I need a promise that you will do anything I ask." Ricardo didn't want to be shy anymore, so he agreed. The next day, Ricardo and a well-dressed Puss came upon a carriage with a broken wheel. It was the carriage of the princess. "Go fix the princess's carriage," Puss said. "This is your chance to show your talent." "I can't do that," said Ricardo. "I'm too shy." But Puss didn't listen. He hurried over to the carriage. "Excuse me," Puss said, "but my master, Ricardo, is a master carpenter and could fix your wheel." The princess was shocked to see this well-dressed, talking cat, but was grateful for the help. "Thank you," she said. "Now, would you help the princess?" Puss asked Ricardo. Ricardo felt shy, but remembered he promised the cat to do whatever he asked, so he decided to help. "I will fix your wheel," Ricardo said. The princess was impressed by how fast Ricardo worked and applauded when he finished.
"Incredible,"
she shouted.
"You saved the day. I would like to thank you by having you both for dinner at the castle tonight."
Ricardo liked the princess and wanted to be her friend, but was too shy. "No, thank you," he said.
"Ahem,"
Puss coughed.
"We would love to come to the castle."
Ricardo again remembered his promise and agreed. That night, Ricardo and Puss arrived at the fancy castle to find it filled with fancy people and fancy food. This made Ricardo even more shy.
"Thank you for helping my daughter," the king said to Ricardo. "I hear you are the most talented carpenter in the kingdom."
"Oh no, my king," Ricardo blushed. "It was just a simple repair." Puss, who was on the other side of the room, heard this and rushed over.
"My master Ricardo is being too modest,"
Puss exclaimed.
"He is the best carpenter in the whole land."
The king, who was curious to see Ricardo's work, had an idea.
"Go home and make me your most beautiful and precious woodwork," the king said. "If I like it, I will make you my royal carpenter."
Ricardo didn't know what to do. He looked to Puss, who didn't know either. That night, Ricardo went to his workshop to think. Without Puss's help, he had to come up with a solution all on his own. After thinking about what would please the king, Ricardo had an idea and got to work. A few days later, Ricardo brought his creation to the king. It was very tall and covered in a white cloth. "You asked for the most beautiful and precious thing in the world," he told the king. "Here it is." Ricardo removed the sheet to reveal a wooden sculpture of the princess.
"It's wonderful!"
exclaimed the king, giving Ricardo a big hug that lifted him high off the ground. Ricardo found a solution to the king's demand all on his own, and showing his talent helped Ricardo overcome his shyness. From that day on, Ricardo, who was never shy again, became the royal carpenter and lived in the palace along with Puss and his friend the princess. The end.
First, it was awesome. Now it's truly amazing. First app gets you instant access to the beloved BabyFirst TV channel, now with an upgraded experience. Wherever you go and anytime you want, offering a wide range of original videos, games, songs, books, and more, making for hours of educational, high-quality entertainment accessible from any device with our all-inclusive subscription. Search the app stores for BF100 to download First today and unlock a world of educational fun for your child.
Adventure, fun, and fantasy are waiting on the shelf. A story's so much better with a friend than by yourself. The cover picture is a doorway to another land. So gather round and let the story take us by the hand. We're telling tales with friends, and we've got plans for you. GaaGaa's playing Goldilocks, this bear is peekaboo. Here's Tilly, Larry, and our Harry, great to have you all. Stories are for everyone, the young, old, big, and small. Tales and Friends. The Bremen Town Musicians. Donnie the Donkey is played by Lift. Ruff the Dog is played by Push. Kitty the Cat is played by Carrie. And Billy the Bird is played by Larry. Once upon a time, there was a town named Bremen, and in that town was a farm. And on that farm lived 3 friends, Donnie the Donkey, Ruff the Dog, and Kitty the Cat. They loved each other and they loved their farm, and more than anything, they loved making music together. But one winter, there was a storm that raged and roared and broke all their instruments. This made them very sad.
Yeah, Donnie the donkey brayed. Life on this farm would be so much better if my piano wasn't broken and we could make music together like we used to.
Donnie didn't know what else to do. He stood in the field and he'd and hawed over and over.
Ee-yaw. Ee-yaw. Ee-yaw.
Across the farm, Ruff the dog's ears perked up. What was that sound? He followed it all the way to the field. When he got there, he saw Donnie hee-hawing. Woof! Barked Ruff. I heard a sound. Was it music? Donnie shook his head.
How could it be music? My piano was broken when the storm raged and roared, remember? I can't play any music.
Ruff nodded. And I wish my drumsticks hadn't been broken. Then we could play music together. Donnie and Ruff didn't know what else to do, so they sat in the field and made their sounds over and over.
Ee-yaw.
Woof, woof.
Ee-yaw.
Woof, woof. From the barn, Kitty the cat's ears perked up. What was that sound? She followed it all the way to the field.
Meow.
Kitty said.
I heard a sound. Was it music?
Donnie and Ruff shook their heads.
How could it be music? All our instruments are broken.
And I wish my horn wasn't broken either,
said Kitty.
Then we could all make music together.
Donnie, Ruff, and Kitty didn't know what else to do, so they sat in the field making their noises over and over.
Ee-yaw.
Woof, woof.
Meow.
Ee-yaw.
Woof, woof.
Meow.
From high up in the tree, Billy the bird's ears perked up. She flew down and followed the sound all the way to the field.
Chirp,
chirped Billy.
I heard a sound. Was it music?
How could there be music?
Donnie brayed.
The storm that raged and roared ruined all of our instruments. My piano is broken, Ruff has no sticks for his drums, and Kitty's horn is cracked. We can't make music together.
Billy smiled.
That's not true. You can make music without a piano, drums, or a horn.
We can? They asked.
Of course. Just listen to this. Chirp, 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 chirp.
Donnie, Ruff, and Kitty couldn't believe it. Billy was making music without a piano, drums, or a horn. When Billy finished her song, they all clapped.
I wish we could make music like that,
Kitty meowed.
You are already making music,
Billy said.
You just didn't know it.
But how? Donnie hawed and Ruff barked.
Easy,
Billy chirped.
All you have to do is put your voices together and you'll have a song.
So they decided to give it a try. First, they started off quietly.
Ee-yaw.
Woof, woof, meow.
Ee-yaw.
Woof, woof, meow.
They were doing it. They were making music. They got even louder, and this time the bird joined in.
Ee-yaw.
Woof, woof, meow. Chirp, chirp.
Ee-yaw.
Woof, woof, meow. Chirp, chirp.
Ee-yaw.
It was the most beautiful music they had ever heard.
Ee-yaw.
Donnie, Ruff, Kitty, and Billy wanted to share it with all their friends. They became the best band in all of Bremen and lived happily ever after. The end.
BabyFirst, click the subscribe button below.